It is impossible to have a boss with little education. The president's son, Kevin, gave me a sneer. "That's right, you're fired," said the department head in a derisive manner. Both Kevin and the director of the department have repeatedly insulted me in this manner. They make fun of me like it's their slogan whenever they see me. The one being told does not take it lightly, even though the person saying it may not feel anything. I can no longer put up with this at such a company. I thought, I'll make them regret making fun of me. I understand. I don't mind getting fired. With effect from today, I resign. I followed through on my plan. Mike Anthony is my name. iFoods is a mid-sized food wholesale company where I work as an employee. I have surpassed the age of 50 and am approaching 25 years of service. In retrospect, it seems like my life has flown by so quickly. My dream since I was a young child was to become a professional boxer, influenced by my father. I joined a boxing gym as soon as I graduated from high school with the goal of becoming a professional fighter while working part-time to support myself. I received a C-class license a year after I joined, having aced my first test. I could enter the professional ring with the license. To put it another way, I started down the path to my dream. Since then, I have given boxing my complete attention while working. I consistently completed my road work and hammered the sandbag day in and day out. My goal was to get stronger enough that I could earn a living only from boxing. I worked really hard with that in mind, but things didn't work out the way I had hoped. I kept winning and losing until I finally realized that 5 years had gone by. I wanted to take center stage and win a championship. I trained hard with that ambition in mind, but reality wasn't kind. Halfway through, I ended up hanging up my gloves. The identification of an eye condition was the cause. The doctor ordered me to retire since it was a problem that could impact my boxing career. I got careless and lost all hope of survival shortly after I retired. I lived a difficult life, lost and unsure of how to continue, and I drowned myself in drink. I was at a turning point in my life. Having barely completed high school, I was making ends meet by taking on odd jobs that anyone could perform. I was not proud of anything. An individual who owns a gym was my salvation. Worried about my simple life, he extended an offer of employment. That's how the gym owner introduced me to iFoods, the firm I currently work for. At the time, the gym I was a member of was sponsored by Michael Jackson, the president of iFoods and a devoted boxing lover. I was fortunate enough to meet him. He is a man who is enthusiastic about helping boxers pursue second careers. My job is to visit producers to source ingredients and get them on the sales channel. I lacked education and professional skills, so I had to leverage my home physical presence, tackling tasks head-on to build a track record. As I lacked professional manners, I initially faced rejection everywhere. But as I kept pushing on, people started to resonate with my dedication. I realized that successful negotiations are not about superficial talk, but about genuinely connecting with others. This approach paid off, and now I manage sales channels exceeding $500,000 a month. All these are bonds formed through heartfelt connections. Michael, the former president, always welcomed the contracts I brought in with open arms. "Mike, you're still pushing hard. Seems like your Boxing Day agility is still with you." "Thanks. My mind might be blank, but I've got to make a living with my legs and heart." Michael and I always shared a smile whenever we crossed paths at work. What worked out well for me was that Michael didn't place me in an existing department, but allowed me to act freely as part of his direct team. He was considerate enough to think that integrating me with my limited professional experience into the organization might crush me. Thanks to that, I was able to act as I please and achieve a lot. However, this privileged situation disappeared with the change of president. Michael, who had taken a liking to me, stepped down due to health reasons. His eldest son, John, took over as president. Unlike Michael, who had built up the food industry from scratch, John was an elite who graduated from a top-tier university. Therefore, his way of thinking was fundamentally different from Michael's. John aimed to restructure the company into a more rational organization, eliminating all inefficiencies and exceptions. While Michael used to place people flexibly beyond organizational boundaries, John completely opposed this approach. With John's reforms, my free-roaming role was lost. Then I was assigned to the sales department. Previously, as part of the president's direct team, I wasn't closely managed, but under the department head's supervision, various restrictions were imposed on me. I, who had been freely visiting producers and achieving results, now had to constantly report where, when, and what I was doing, regardless of the outcomes. It's probably expected in the professional world, but for someone inexperienced like me, it started to feel suffocating. Yet, John allowed me some freedom. He probably realized that too many constraints would negate my strengths. He then created a new division called the Third Department in Sales and appointed me as its manager. So I didn't have such a bad impression of John's presidency. It wasn't the freedom I had under Michael, but it wasn't too dismal either. However, 3 years after John took over, a situation I'd call a disaster struck me. The head of the sales department was replaced by Steve. Steve was an extreme academic elitist. Before discussing sales performance or contributions to the company, he judged people by their education. With his high academic credentials, Steve would speak on equal terms with those of similar education and look down on those with lower qualifications. This bias extended to the company's hierarchy. Flattering those above him were likely to rise, while harshly bullying those in lower positions. I became the perfect target for Steve. "Hey Mike, you don't know this. What college did you go to again?" "Oh right, just high school." Steve ridiculed me for being a high school graduate. He flaunted his knowledge and took the upper hand when he saw I didn't understand something. I think jealousy over my accomplishments played a part too. He couldn't stand that someone with far less education than him was appointed as a manager and receiving special treatment. "Hey, you used to be a boxer, right? Don't try to intimidate with your fists just because you're not smart." "I wouldn't do that," I replied, glaring back. "Oh, whoa, don't look so scary. Better watch out, everyone. He's a boxer." Steve would stir things up and mock me in front of other employees. I struggled to suppress the rising anger and retorted, "I'm not fighting with my fists. I'm competing with my legs." I pointed to my head, saying that I placed my fist against my chest. Then Steve glared at me, lowering his voice to intimidate. "Don't get cocky. You might have been favored under the previous president, but now that I'm in charge, no more special treatment. Until then, I had the freedom to visit any producer across the country. However, since Steve became the department head, I had to pay for all travel expenses myself unless I got his approval. For someone who built their reputation on legwork, this was a matter of survival. But this was just the beginning of the troubles. The next year, things got even worse. The president's son, Kevin, who got in through connections, was assigned to the sales department's third division that I managed. Kevin is a high-achieving elite adored by Steve. On top of that, he holds the unmatched title of the president's son. Being both an elite and the president's son, it's natural that he's considered the next president. Sensing this, Steve was all over Kevin, trying to win his favor. On the other hand, Kevin, flattered by Steve, was on cloud nine. "Kevin, you're in league from a top-tier university. You obviously have deep insights. It's a world of difference compared to some boxing fool." "Hey, Steve, who's the boxing fool?" Steve pointed at me. "That tough guy over there, trying to compensate for his stupidity with brute force. Stay away, or stupidity might be contagious." Steve was bad-mouthing me to Kevin, trying to instill a negative image. "But you can't get into this company if you're dumb, right?" "You think so, but he's just a high school grad," Steve said, smirking. "Really? A high school grad as a manager? It's embarrassing to have a boss with just a high school diploma." Exactly, the former president liked boxing, so he must have been a special hire, kind of a sympathy hire if you will, and yet he clings to that favor shamelessly, overstaying his welcome. Their conversation echoed through the quiet office. Steve spoke loudly, making sure I could hear, and Kevin matched his tone. Noticing my gaze, Steve smirked. "I'm really worried, Kevin. You've been assigned to the same third division as a boxing idiot without any consultation with me, the head. What on earth is the president thinking?" Clearly, Steve was displeased with Kevin's assignment to the third division, but I felt the same. I didn't want to babysit some privileged kid. Dealing with a high-flying, well-connected elite was the last thing I wanted. To me, Kevin was nothing but a curse. Hey Mike, one day during lunch as I was reading on my laptop, Steve called out rudely. His call was so rude that I approached with a scowl. Then Steve thrust his palm forward, apparently a signal to come no closer. I faced Steve with a resigned look. Listen, Kevin is not your subordinate, all right? Don't get it twisted, he said that with a snide leer next to him. Kevin gave me a small smile, catching my eye. I silently glared at Steve. Then, as I shifted my gaze to Kevin, Steve stepped between us. Be careful, Kevin. This dumb boxer is quick to throw a punch. I felt my blood boil. It wasn't just an insult to me, but to all boxers. I had never used my fists outside the ring, but I couldn't help thinking how satisfying it would be to land a solid punch on Steve's face. Such thoughts crossed my mind. Steve, thinking I wouldn't retaliate, continued to taunt me with arrogance. I knew I shouldn't take the bait, yet my fist itched to respond. But no, that would be the end of everything. I managed to suppress the rising anger and walked away. Since Kevin joined, Steve's harassment intensified daily. Travel expenses were no longer approved, and soon even self-funded trips were restricted. Furthermore, Steve proposed simultaneously lowering the purchase price from producers and raising the selling price to retailers. The plan was to buy cheap from the producers and sell high to the clients, aiming to make a hefty profit. If we do that, we'll lose all the trust we've built, I protested fiercely. Trust? Don't make me laugh. Those farmers and clients probably think they can fool you because you're uneducated. Steve's words fueled my anger, and I felt my temples throbbing. That's not true. Our producers take pride in their work. We must fairly evaluate and purchase their goods at a reasonable price. That's the role of a wholesaler, I countered with reason. But Steve was dismissive. Stop talking nonsense. That's not how you make money in business. It's all about outsmarting each other. The smart exploit the foolish. The deceivers win and the deceived lose. That's business for you. Steve was so focused on profit that he neglected the care needed for producers and retailers. A wholesaler that exploits for greed loses trust and will eventually be ousted from the market. Steve didn't get that. Meanwhile, Kevin mocked my face-to-face meetings with producers and retailers. Meeting in person is so outdated. Everything can be done online now. You really are from the old school. I meet with producers to taste their products firsthand and understand the effort behind their flavors. It's about grasping hands with callous fingers, seeing the wrinkles on foreheads, and sharing smiles. Things only possible through personal interaction. I communicate and ensure that the retail stores understand the value of this work. Ingredients to achieve this require building a trust relationship through direct meetings, I explained. Kevin may think everything can be done online, but I disagree. My views are in direct conflict with those of Steve and Kevin, and this further deteriorated the relationship between the two parties. Their contempt for me intensified, making it clear they wanted me out of the company. And finally, I reached my breaking point. As I was working in the office, the two of them approached, as usual. A low-educated person shouldn't be a manager, right? Kevin said, looking down on me. Exactly, you're fired, Steve continued with a mocking tone. I had endured these insults time and again. While the one saying it might not feel anything, it's unbearable for the one on the receiving end. My mind was made up, and I was ready. I was done tolerating this company. I would make them regret ever looking down on me. Is that so? I said, understood. I'll resign effective today. My straightforward resignation seemed to surprise Steve and Kevin as they exchanged looks. Then their expressions relaxed, and they burst into laughter. So you're quitting? Finally, we're free from a low-educated idiot. They rejoiced. Watching the two rejoice, I felt a sense of despair, but it wasn't for my future. It was despair for Steve, Kevin, and perhaps the future of this company. I submitted my resignation that day and put into motion the plan I had prepared before resigning. 3 months before resigning, I had a meeting with a contact from a company. This company operates a supermarket chain called S-Market, which is part of S Holdings. S-Market was the biggest client for Y Foods, and I managed most of the sales channels there. Moreover, if you include group companies, over 50% of Y Foods clients were under S Holdings. The person in charge at Test Market approached me. They noticed my role as a bridge between producers and retailers and suggested that I consider changing jobs. If producers and retailers could connect directly, it would cut the intermediary margins paid to wholesale companies. Some of that saved money could then be passed back to the producers, benefiting both sides. This was of Market's proposal. However, establishing connections with top-notch producers is no easy task. It requires keen judgment and a trustful relationship with the producers. You won't understand their growing environment, peak seasons, or whether they use pesticides without visiting them in person. That's why they sought to target someone like me, who is well versed in these matters. I agreed with Market's approach and was positively considering it, waiting for the right moment. Exiting the wholesale stage would mean negotiating directly with the producers and arranging for distribution. Without careful planning and understanding, the project could falter. But I had built up trust over many years. This allowed me to prepare without much difficulty, and when everything was ready, the moment came. A month after resigning, I received a call from Steve. "Mike, what the hell have you done?" Steve's voice was furious. "What happened?" I knew what was going on, but pretended to be unaware. "Don't play dumb. You told the farmers to stop shipments, didn't you?" He was right. After moving to the U.S. market, I had contacted all the farmers I dealt with and had their shipments go to iFoods instead. They would purchase directly from them. "Is that so?" Steve said, his voice dripping with frustration. "That's unfortunate. But isn't that the farmer's decision? If there's someone willing to pay more, changing suppliers is just logical." I responded calmly, aggravating Steve further. "Right," I responded calmly, aggravating Steve further. "I'm not talking about one or two cases. It's strange that all the farmers you were in charge of stopped at once." Steve ranted in frustration. No amount of yelling from Steve could faze me anymore. I calmly assessed the situation that was bound to happen and spoke the lines I had prepared. That's all there was to it. If I were the one calling the farmers and they agreed to it, would there be any problem with that? I asked coldly, and Steve could only groan in response. There was no issue here. The farmers I've worked with are free to decide where to supply their products. I've dealt with producers based on a relationship of trust. There's no obligation for them to supply We Foods exclusively. You're out for revenge, huh? You're doing this because we made fun of you. Steve sneered. Maybe I'm not as smart as Kevin, so I wouldn't know. My casual remark fueled Steve's anger even more. You don't mock me. Call the farmers now and get them to ship the products, or else. Or else what will happen? I asked. Or else we'll never buy from them again. Tell that to the farmers. His arrogance was astounding. Did Steve really think he was at the top of the food chain? It's not about buying from them. It's please sell to us, I thought. He doesn't understand that he looked down on the farmers, the very starting point of the food chain. I can pass the message, but they might just say they'll never sell to you again, I said. My words made Steve even more agitated. Mike, you're pretty bold, aren't you? What? I have my ways too. There are plenty of farmers out there. Even if we don't buy directly from them, we can source products elsewhere. Your revenge means nothing to me. Steve's extreme arrogance made my stomach turn. There was no reaching him. To someone who thinks the world revolves around him, further discussion was pointless. Does your company have farmers willing to sell to you? And remember, the retailers we contract with have strict quality standards. I said this with an implication and abruptly ended the call. Steve might say he's unbothered, but this was just a jab. I'm about to deal a decisive blow. I smirked at my silent phone. I could clearly see why Wife Foods was struggling with procurement. This was evident as the volume of food being delivered to our market had drastically decreased. There is a purchase agreement between this market and Wife Foods preventing unilateral termination until the contract expires. However, if Wife Foods can't supply enough, the situation changes. I've been waiting for this moment, and then I'll notify Steve of the contract termination. Sales manager Steve, right? I'm Mike, now the head of procurement at Market. I called from my personal phone, not using the company line. Mike, why are you at Market? Steve asked. I've changed jobs since I was fired from Duddy Foods. Steve's response faltered momentarily. He must be desperately trying to sort out his thoughts amid the confusion. I quickly moved to the main topic. I intend to discuss terminating our contract with your company. When would be convenient for you? Steve flustered and interjected, "Wait, what? Why are we talking about terminating the contract all of a sudden? And why do I have to hear this from you?" I spoke calmly to the unsettled Steve. "I'll explain in detail later. For now, could you just tell me when you're available?" His confusion was palpable. It was understandable that Steve found it hard to grasp that I, whom they drove out for being undereducated, had moved to a client company. For Steve, this must be an unexpected scenario, but I was the one making it happen. Unable to organize his thoughts, Steve agreed to my visit. He probably couldn't refuse since I wanted to meet in person. Soon after, I headed to W Foods, entering their headquarters building. As an employee of Misconduct, it felt like stepping into enemy territory. It sent a shiver down my spine. Once in the conference room, after a while, Steve and Kevin appeared. Since Kevin was there simply as the president's son, his presence here hardly mattered, but this situation was convenient for my revenge. "Let's proceed with the termination of the contract." I started the meeting by handing over my business card and cutting to the chase. "Wait a second. We'll talk about that later. First, tell me why you're with Misconduct." Panic was evident on Steve's face. Beside him, Kevin looked utterly perplexed, observing the unfolding events. This was a perfect opportunity to teach this novice the harsh realities of the business world. I first questioned Steve's demeanor. "Steve, you were an elite with a high education, weren't you? Then I would expect you to at least adhere to business etiquette. Calling someone from a client company and demanding answers so rudely doesn't seem very professional, does it?" Steve frowned but offered no apology. He didn't want to acknowledge me as a representative of a client company. Kevin, next to us, sported a smug smile, peering at Steve's face. Apparently, he felt no tension in this situation. "Well, it seems manners and education are two different things," I mused, casting a quick glance at Steve. I then recounted my transition to Misconduct, how I was tormented for being undereducated, my growing doubts about why foods greed, the realization that direct transactions between retailers and producers could cut costs, and how Steve repeatedly told me I was fired. I poured out all my thoughts and shared how I was scouted by Misconduct. "That's funny, isn't it?" Kevin interjected suddenly. "You got mad at Steve for belittling you, so you switched to a client company, and now you're cutting off the contract as payback. Hilarious." I gave Kevin a stern look, but he just kept grinning. He didn't seem to grasp the implications of our contract termination. What a foolish rookie. "Steve, just end the contract with this company already. We can manage without them, right? S restaurant, S store, S processed foods, S dairy, plenty of other clients. Dropping one contract should be no big deal." Frustration was evident in Steve's eyes as he glanced at Kevin. "Those are all part of the Misconduct conglomerate," Steve muttered, his shoulders slumping. "Really?" Kevin exclaimed in surprise, completely taken aback. I'm utterly speechless at his ignorance. This novice doesn't even know our company's clients properly. If Misconduct pulls out, its affiliated companies will likely follow suit in terminating the contracts. That means Y Foods would lose sales channels comprising 50% of the total transaction volume. "But we can just find new ones, right?" "It's totally doable." Kevin patted Steve's shoulder. Steve brushed his hand away. The gravity of the situation seemed to have finally hit Steve, leaving him without the energy to correct Kevin. So I explained it for them. "With all due respect, even if you secure new sales channels, you can't do business without products to sell." Steve gave me a puzzled look, shooting a sharp glance my way. I continued pressing my point. "Our company has directly contracted not only with the rice, vegetable, and fruit farmers previously associated with the head office, but with all the producers I was involved with. In other words, your company has lost not just the sales channels but also the supply sources." As I spoke, Kevin's eyes darted around nervously. "That's unbelievably bad." He finally realized the severity. Meanwhile, Steve burst out, "Mike, are you that upset about being mocked for your education?" I looked at Steve coldly. You only know how to hit others, never feeling the blow yourself. That's why you can say such terrible things without a second thought. But it's not just about being mocked for my education. I wouldn't have gone this far for that alone. What I couldn't forgive was Steve's despicable plan to exploit the producers and overcharge the retailers. Steve had said, "Business is about deceiving each other. The smart exploit the foolish. That's business." He had said that, claiming the tricksters win and the fools lose. I couldn't stand such blatant statements. "Steve, you said business is all about deception, right? So I played the game by your rules, by cutting Y Foods out. Both our company and the producers benefit. It's a win-win." Suddenly, Kevin stood up, his eyes bloodshot. He then stormed out of the conference room. Steve was shaking slightly, looking for a chance to counter, but he was speechless. Eventually, the matter escalated beyond the sales director's level, and the president stepped in to negotiate. My explanation ends here. I concluded in the president's office, laying bare the entire saga to President John. I reported everything, including the harassment from Steve and Kevin during my time at Y Foods and how Steve disdained producers and retailers. As my narrative unfolded, the president's expression grew stern, and he reached his limit. "Get Steve and Kevin in here now," an irritated John demanded over the intercom. "What have you done?" "Apologize to Mike right now." Upon their arrival, he rebuked them. His furious demeanor was almost demonic. "I'm sorry." Steve cowed under his intensity. Kevin looked on with a detached gaze. "Kevin, apologize too." "Why should I? It's Steve's fault, isn't it? He's the one who upset the old man." John approached Kevin, who showed no remorse. He stood squarely before him, grabbing his collar. His right hand was clenched into a fist. I quickly moved beside John and gently gripped his wrist. "Let's stop this. Fists won't solve anything," I whispered to John. John looked deeply into my eyes and nodded slightly. "Kevin, apologize," he commanded in a low, soft voice. Yielding to the intense pressure, Kevin apologized. "Steve, I can't believe how foolish you've been. Be prepared to take responsibility for your actions. And Kevin, I overestimated you. I'm ashamed of how you've turned out." John sharply criticized them, but suddenly stopped, overcome by a sense of futility. Then he turned his gaze towards me. "I truly apologize. It was my mistake to have Steve in our most important sales division. I thought Kevin could become a sincere professional under a spirited businessman like you. It seems I overestimated my foolish son. I'm truly sorry." John apologized several times. He then quietly accepted the termination, signing the document. "I expect some more notices from our affiliates soon. You should be prepared," I said. John nodded. Then he dismissed Steve and Kevin and turned to me. "This is all my fault. I'll ensure Steve and Kevin face appropriate consequences. We'll likely suffer catastrophic damage, but we will rise again. I've learned from you about the right way to run a wholesale business." Leaving the president's office, I saw John with a lonely smile. I wondered what punishment Steve and Kevin would face. While imagining this, a faint pain throbbed in my chest as I pictured John's face. It was reminiscent of the emotions felt after a boxing match when exchanging handshakes with an opponent I had thoroughly defeated. Y Foods, having lost a major client, temporarily ceased operations. Many employees were forced to find new jobs, with some being accepted by S Market and S Holdings Group companies. Faced with an existential crisis, Y Foods drastically downsized to pave its way to recovery. John planned to rebuild from scratch, establishing new procurement and sales channels. Naturally, Steve was not part of these plans. He was dismissed for his actions. Kevin, being his son, wasn't abandoned but was set for rigorous retraining. Rumor has it that he's now enduring the harshness of life on a tuna fishing boat, a world where academic credentials hold no sway. This might be the necessary lesson for someone like Kevin. However, it's highly doubtful he can withstand such extreme conditions. Yet once on the fishing boat, there's no quick return. No matter how difficult it gets, there's nothing to be done about it. After switching jobs to S Market, I was transferred to oversee procurement for the entire S Group holdings. My position remains as a manager, But moving from a company under the group to overseeing the entire group division is essentially a promotion. I'm now on a special mission to source the finest ingredients, traveling across the USA. My salary has significantly increased, and I've gained the freedom to act as I please. I've come full circle, able to do the job as I used to. I confront producers directly, taking on all their hardships to procure ingredients and deliver the treasures produced through hardship to consumers in the best possible state. That's the mission given to me.
Something like a janitor? The manager is me. I'll dismiss everybody who disobeys me. Nathan, wearing a pricey suit, laughed aloud as he put a filthy rag on my head. Then he instantly cast icy gazes down at me. Please bring Mr. Nelson here right now. The atmosphere in the office was instantly changed by my soothing words. A security guard also showed up, and Megan came up holding some papers. The moment had come for Nathan's reign to end, and all the proof had been collected. It was going to be made public. It was time to take action as a hands-on leader and safeguard the company's future. I'm Stephen Owens, and I'm 41 years old. As usual, I began cleaning this morning at 6 o'clock before the sun had even risen. I meticulously cleaned the restrooms, swept the floors, and wiped off desks. This is how I spend my days. You're here early, Tyler. Oh, Stephen, I wanted to arrange some paperwork and come in early. Tyler, a recent hire, was at his desk going over a business proposal when I called out to him. Tyler only started working there in April. He works hard and is serious. I've frequently observed him showing up for work, even on his days off, under Nathan's careful supervision. Tyler gave me a questioning glance as I took up a management magazine and began reading stories on statistics and business analysis. Do you read management books, Stephen? Yes, I must stay informed about the company's developments. At that moment, I felt a presence coming. Good morning, Stephen. The president's secretary, Megan, was grinning softly when I turned around. We've been acquainted for roughly 3 months. Once more, you arrive early. You are a huge assistance to us. It's not noteworthy, simply carrying out my duties. Every 3 months, I switch shifts as a janitor. In the corporate group I'm looking into, this is the 53rd company. I keep my role as chairman a secret so that I can hear straight from the field. I noticed Nathan was already there when I looked over at his desk. Nathan is constantly busy sorting documents when he arrives, which is around 7:30 a.m. He struggled with a mountain of receipts today as well. The regular guard met me on my way to the security room. I appreciate all of your hard work. You're as early as usual. Yes, this place has a pleasant vibe. The staff members are decent individuals. Yes, but I'm concerned because there has been a lot more overtime lately. Yeah, I said, and walked out of the security room. More workers started to show up as the office began to receive sunshine. Megan was making coffee elegantly, while Tyler was absorbed in his paperwork. I silently watched the business's operations while I stored my cleaning supplies. I could hear Nathan quickly getting rid of papers, and I could hear the shredder. I chose to remain cautious for the time being, despite his worrying conduct. Over the previous 3 months, I had seen Nathan's strange conduct, but it was not time to take action. I finished cleaning the restrooms after wiping off the desks. The polished floor glinted in the morning sun that streamed through the windows. The start of a new day was imminent. Shouts came from the meeting room at 9 in the morning. Tyler was being severely reprimanded by Nathan. How many times must I tell you this? This proposal is pointless. With a pale face and shaking hands, Tyler emerged with his documents as the door opened. I walked up to him in silence after clearing the desk. How about a cup of tea, Tyler? Tyler shook his hands and took the tea in the break room. Notable red scrolls were used to mark up the proposal that was set on the desk. Nathan most likely wrote it. Tyler started talking in a tiny voice. Stephen, how bad is my proposal? Give me a chance to look. As I read it, I saw his adaptable style and sound data analysis, which are hallmarks of a budding star. Nathan's critiques were incorrect. Nathan told me to come up with improvements by the end of the month, but I have no idea how to fix it. I think the market analysis here is good. Maybe just add a few more specific figures. Just then, Nathan walked into the break room. He glanced at us briefly, then shot a sharp look at Tyler. Still wasting time here. Hurry up and fix it. Startled, Tyler quickly gathered his documents and returned to his desk. Nathan turned to me, looking down coldly. A janitor has no business sticking his nose in. Just focus on your work. He said that coldly, then bought a coffee from the vending machine and left. By early afternoon, Tyler was still at his desk, immersed in revising his proposal without even taking lunch. Next to him, Nathan was enjoying an expensive-looking lunch while chatting with his subordinates. Peeking into Nathan's drawer, I noticed a pile of receipts. Megan quietly placed a rice ball on Tyler's desk. Tyler smiled gratefully at her thoughtful gesture. At 3:00 p.m., yelling erupted from the meeting room again. This time, a new employee had become Nathan's target. Then another employee was called in, and the harsh reprimands continued. Nathan's behavior has been strange lately. He's particularly harsh on the younger employees. Yeah, do you know why? Overtime has shot up since last month, and there's been a lot of shredding. I see. Thanks for letting me know. After thanking the security guard, I returned to my work. As 5:00 p.m. approached, the office started to grow dim. Tyler was still at his desk, wrestling with a proposal. Nathan seemed to have left for the day. Tyler, it's already past quitting time. Did you file your overtime request? No. It's hard to bring it up with Nathan. I noticed Megan heading to the president's office, seemingly to make a report. As I passed by Tyler's desk, I noticed he was staring at the screen with a tired expression. There was no stamp on his time card. When collecting the end-of-month trash, I realized that the amount of shredded paper was unusually large. Carefully gathering it, I noticed traces of shredded receipts. I took out my phone and quietly started recording. Nathan's behavior, the unnatural handling of receipts, and the excessive reprimanding of young employees. Everything must be connected. The next morning, Tyler arrived with dark circles under his eyes. On his desk lay the proposal he had stayed up all night revising. Nathan walked into the office with a proud look, wearing a new tie. He slammed Tyler's revised proposal onto the desk. In the quiet early morning office, his angry voice echoed. How is this supposed to be an improved proposal? Your data analysis is sloppy, and the market research is shallow. Do you really think this is good enough, Tyler? May I see that proposal? What now? A janitor meddling again? Just stick to cleaning. Excuse me, but this data analysis is accurate. In fact, it's an excellent proposal that leverages the company's strengths. I picked up the proposal and pointed out the key elements. The method of calculating market size, comparative analysis with competitors, and the feasibility check. All of it was on point, especially this part. The method for acquiring new customers is realistic, and the first-year sales forecast uses conservative figures, making it highly achievable. What would a janitor know? Nathan sneered. The basics of business analysis are not just about theoretical numbers. It's about reflecting the voices from the field. Tyler's proposal clearly embodies that perspective. I took out a business magazine and presented the latest market data. Nathan's expression stiffened slightly. According to this industry magazine, Tyler's market forecast is highly accurate. Actually, what concerns me more is your company's accounting practices. What are you talking about? Megan, who was on her way to the president's office, paused and listened to our conversation. Since last month, overtime has spiked, and there's been an unusual increase in expenses, particularly entertainment costs. Tyler looked at me in surprise. The security guard was also watching from a distance. You wouldn't know a thing about running a company. Don't bother coming in tomorrow. You're fired. Is that so? Then let's take a closer look at the expense details. I took out my phone and played back the recorded conversations. The evidence revealed Nathan's abusive remarks toward younger employees, forced unpaid overtime, and hints of inflated expenses. I turned to Tyler. Tyler, have you been properly submitting your overtime requests? No. It's hard to bring it up with Nathan. This needs to be reported to Mr. Nelson. Hearing our conversation, Nathan's attitude suddenly changed. No, it's a misunderstanding. I was only doing it for the company. For the company? Really? I checked his desk and noticed the shredded documents. Everything had been verified. Megan had already reported the situation to the president, and it was only a matter of time before Mr. Nelson summoned him. Tyler, your proposal is more than adequate. In fact, it's exactly what the company needs. I hope it gets implemented. Stephen, thank you. Nathan tried to leave the office, but at the entrance, he ran into the security guard. Nathan, I've been hearing the shredder a lot lately. I pressed on as Nathan hesitated. I also confirmed with the accounting department. There seemed to be some unusually large transactions. Then Megan delivered the final blow. Mr. Nelson wants to see you, Nathan. From that day on, Nathan's oppressive behavior gradually diminished. Tyler's proposal was officially approved, and a project team was formed. Among the younger employees, morale began to rise. After finishing my morning cleaning, I was drinking tea in the security room as usual. Outside the window, a breeze signaled the arrival of a new season. I'd resumed my cleaning, and when I glanced at the clock, it was already 10:00 a.m. Stephen, how about taking a break? The aroma of the coffee Megan had brewed filled the air. The morning sunlight streaming through the office window softly illuminated her profile. Stephen, thank you for helping with Tyler's proposal. It was just the right thing to do. But it's strange, isn't it? A janitor who knows so much about business. There was a curious glint in Megan's eyes as she smiled. Maybe she already knew who I really was. Megan, when did you realize it? From the first time we met. The way you wiped Mr. Nelson's desk was exactly like how Mr. Owens used to do it. I never thought she'd noticed from the very beginning. Since it was still work hours, I thanked her for the coffee and went back to my tasks. During lunch break, Megan offered me a homemade lunch. We sat by the window in the break room, just the two of us. Actually, I knew of Mr. Owens since my student days. I often interviewed you as a junior member of the journalism club. Oh, I remember. I was quite a bold student back then. Not at all. You already showed signs of being a great leader, especially your dedication to the field. As I took a bite of the omelette, it tasted just like my mother's cooking. Megan's kindness was evident in every dish. Outside, the cherry blossoms were dancing in the wind, signaling the arrival of a new season. Sharing lunch with Megan became a routine, and our conversations gradually shifted from work to personal topics. Stephen, how about going to see the cherry blossoms this weekend? Well, but as a janitor, it might be a bit awkward to go out with the president's secretary. Just talk to me normally. Let's go together. The blossoms should be in full bloom by the weekend. To hide my blushing, I nodded repeatedly. On the day of the cherry blossom viewing, Megan appeared in a light pink dress. Under the full bloom, we enjoyed a peaceful time together. Stephen, why did you choose to work as a janitor? I'd wanted to hear the voices from the field directly. Numbers alone don't reveal the real situation. I'd admire that mindset, Megan. Thank you. Her confession, carried by the spring breeze, sounded as gentle as the falling petals. One afternoon, we visited an art museum. Megan paused in front of a painting, passionately explaining its story. Her enthusiasm reminded me of her journalism days. One evening, Megan brought important documents from the president's office. They contained new evidence of Nathan's misconduct. I want to protect this company just like you do. Your strength always helps me. I took the documents from her. As night fell, Megan remained at her desk, still working. I made her a warm cup of coffee to keep her going. Thanks to Megan's support, we managed to put an end to Nathan's reckless actions. She supports the company from behind the scenes, and she also supports me. On the weekend, we visited a seaside restaurant together. As the sun slowly sank below the horizon, Megan spoke with a calm expression. "Stephen, at some point, we'll have to make our relationship public." "Yeah, once everything is settled, I'll make it official." Little by little, we grew closer, and our relationship naturally began. The warm breeze wrapped around us, and the sound of the waves quietly echoed. It felt as if the future itself was giving us its blessing. On Monday morning, an unusual tension filled the office. Nathan had urgently summoned Tyler's project team. The new project that had been progressing smoothly until last week had suddenly come to a halt. "What's this number?" "The budget has almost doubled." "Who's responsible?" "I'm sorry, but this increase is necessary as an initial investment." "Shut up. Do you think that kind of excuse will work?" Nathan slammed the proposal onto the office table. As the young employees shrank back, I quietly observed the situation while wiping the desks. "So should I cut your salaries to make up for it?" "No one gets overtime pay this month." Megan entered the office. She tried to deliver a message from Mr. Nelson, but Nathan wouldn't listen. "I'm busy right now. Come back later." Megan left the office with a troubled expression. She seemed to have discovered something important. During lunch break, while I was chatting with the security guard, Tyler rushed in with a pale face. "Stephen, something terrible happened. The project budget as..." "Calm down. What's going on?" "The numbers on the documents that came back from accounting are different from what we submitted. When I checked the accounting documents, I found that the project budget had been inflated, and the difference had been recorded as a separate expense. It was clear evidence of accounting fraud." Nathan walked by, wearing a luxurious new suit, a fresh tie, and expensive leather shoes. While cutting employees' overtime pay, he was clearly spending extravagantly on himself. In the afternoon, Nathan's angry voice echoed through the office once again. This time, his target was an employee from the accounting department. "Why was this document left unattended? Handle it immediately." "But Nathan, this was supposed to." "Just do as I say." Megan had finished reporting to the president and quietly returned to the office. It was clear that Nathan's misconduct was reaching a point where it couldn't be hidden anymore. That evening, Nathan took a bundle of receipts from his desk and headed toward the shredder room. "If this keeps up, the project will be destroyed. You are doing the right thing. It's too early to give up." Late into the night, Megan was meticulously checking the documents left on the desk. Among them were new pieces of evidence confirming Nathan's misconduct. "Megan, it's already late." "Yes, but I can't overlook this." Saying that, Megan went back to reviewing the documents. The next morning, Nathan appeared in the office at dawn, hurriedly disposing of documents. He looked like a cornered animal. Tyler's project team, despite being battered by budget cuts, was working hard to revise their plans. Their sincere efforts seemed to be lighting the way for the company's future. Nathan's reckless behavior finally exploded in the worst possible way. During the morning meeting, Nathan abruptly announced the cancellation of Tyler's project. "This project is terminated. The budget waste is unacceptable." "But Nathan, we've already made commitments to the client." "Shut up. A kid like you shouldn't be squandering the company's money." A merciless slap landed on Tyler's cheek. The office froze as Nathan's verbal abuse continued. "Pack your things immediately. You don't need to come in tomorrow." While the employees held their breath, I stood still, holding my cleaning tools. Then Nathan turned his fury toward me. "You saw that, didn't you? Don't you dare defend this disgrace to the company." Nathan roughly snatched the rag from my hand and threw it at my head without mercy. The cold water from the rag dripped down my face, soaking my collar. A janitor like you has no right to act so high and mighty. Megan quickly rushed over and handed me a towel, her hands trembling slightly. Nathan, I will report this to Mr. Nelson. Shut up. One by one, members of Tyler's project team were called in, facing relentless reprimands. From the shredder room, the constant sound of paper being destroyed echoed through the office. This is too much. Someone needs to put a stop to it. Yeah, you're right. Shortly after noon, the accounting department raised a new allegation. In addition to budget tampering, it was discovered that a substantial amount of maintenance expenses had been misappropriated. The documents Megan brought contained definitive proof of Nathan's misconduct: lavish spending at luxury clubs, overseas trips, and purchases of high-end brand items. All of it was processed as company expenses. Just as Nathan was about to leave the office, Mr. Nelson appeared. Nathan, I've always had doubts about your methods. Mr. Nelson, this is a misunderstanding. I was acting for the company's benefit. For the company? Destroying young talent and misusing company funds. Is that really for the company? Cornered, Nathan snapped. He grabbed the documents from the desk and threw them at Tyler. It's all your fault. You're denying my achievements. That was the moment I slowly stood up and spoke coldly. Bring Mr. Nelson here immediately. The janitor thinks he can give orders. I threw the rag onto the floor and faced Nathan's madness head-on. Tyler, pale and stunned, stood motionless while the surrounding employees held their breath, watching. A heavy tension filled the office. This was the final trigger, and everything was about to change drastically. Nathan's reign was finally reaching its end. Sunlight from the window illuminated Nathan's figure, dressed in his expensive suit. His desk was scattered with traces of his earlier reckless behavior, scattered documents, a fallen pen holder, and the rag he had thrown at me earlier all testified to his arrogance. The atmosphere in the office instantly froze. Everyone present seemed to sense what was about to happen, holding their breath. The employee's eyes moved back and forth between Nathan and me. I stepped forward, stood in front of Nathan, and slowly pulled my ID card from my chest pocket. Under the fluorescent light, the clearly printed words became visible. I am Stephen, the chairman of the group. The color drained from Nathan's face. His throat, wrapped in a high-end designer tie, made a dry rasping sound. What are you talking about? You're just a janitor. At that moment, Megan stepped forward. She held a thick envelope in her hand. Inside were the countless pieces of evidence gathered during the 3-month investigation, finally about to come to light. These are the records of the past 3 months: expense reports, excessive entertainment expenses, fake receipts, and unpaid overtime. All the evidence is here. Heavy footsteps approached. It was Mr. Nelson. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a stern gaze directed at Nathan. Mr. Owens, thank you for your hard work. I deeply apologize for not seeing the truth sooner. Mr. Nelson bowed deeply. Nathan desperately tried to find a way out of the situation. The sound of his expensive leather shoes echoed on the floor. Mr. Nelson, this is a setup. The janitor is trying to frame me. All the documents you shredded have been reconstructed. Lavish spending at luxury clubs and purchases of brand-name items. All of it was processed as company expenses. The security guard brought in a heavy cardboard box. Inside were the carefully reassembled shredded documents revealing Nathan's guilt. The remnants of his nightly evidence destruction were gathered here. I've been hearing the shredder at odd hours every night, especially late at the end of each month. What's even more shocking is that you altered the project budget, pocketing the difference. You crushed the efforts of the young employees and claimed their achievements as your own. Tyler's hands trembled. The documents he spread out clearly showed the original budget proposal alongside the falsified numbers. The discrepancies were obvious at a glance. This is our original proposal. There was no budget overrun. In fact, we propose a more efficient operation. Nathan's face grew increasingly pale, and he started backing away. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his luxury suit wrinkled unnaturally. No, this is a mistake. I did it for the company's growth. The numbers were challenging, but for the company's growth. How does trampling on young employees' efforts and committing fraud benefit the company? You twisted everything to satisfy your own desires. Since you became a manager, you've changed. Where did your honest attitude go? I used to trust you. Mr. Nelson's words made the atmosphere in the office even heavier. Veteran employees who knew the old Nathan had conflicted expressions on their faces. Megan presented another set of documents. It was the detailed audit report from the accounting department. According to this report, the amount of embezzlement over the past 2 years amounts to $800,000. Not only inflated entertainment expenses, but also fictitious orders and personal use of company funds. The methods were extremely elaborate. No, I had my reasons. I'd worked my way up from a high school graduate, putting everything into this job, still making excuses. But what's truly unforgivable is how you treated Tyler and his team. You trampled on their potential and crushed their dreams. You sacrificed the company's future leaders for your own self-preservation. All the employees' eyes were fixed on Nathan. Their gazes were a mix of anger, disappointment, and just a hint of pity. You destroyed their growth for your own gain. As a leader, that is the gravest sin. You used your position and reputation solely for yourself. You will cooperate with the police investigation. Of course, we will also take legal action in civil court. You must repay the embezzled amount. With those final words, Nathan's legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor. There was no trace of dignity left in his figure. His expensive suit was creased. His designer tie was crooked. Sweat from his forehead dripped onto his pricey leather shoes. Tyler, your project is vital to the company's future. We will secure the necessary budget and manpower. Nurturing young talent, not crushing it, is the responsibility of a leader. Tears welled up in Tyler's eyes. The expressions of the younger employees began to brighten little by little. The heavy atmosphere slowly started to lift. Mr. Owens, I deeply apologize. It was my lack of oversight. No, I'm glad I was able to hear the voices from the field firsthand. We will use this experience to drive reform. This company still has plenty of room to grow. Megan quietly stood by my side, her gentle smile softening the tense atmosphere. Nathan's reckless behavior had finally come to an end. The young employee's eyes were beginning to regain their former sparkle. This was the change I had been hoping for. Nathan remained sitting on the floor, his face blank as if he had lost everything. The once glamorous suit and expensive leather shoes now looked like nothing more than pitiful decorations. Stand up. At least try to act like a manager to the very end. Stumbling, Nathan managed to get to his feet. Some of his former colleagues, now middle-aged employees, wore conflicted expressions. They were the ones who had witnessed Nathan's rise and fall up close. Not all of your achievements were in vain. I took out my phone and displayed past sales data. It showed records from the time when Nathan worked tirelessly as a young salesperson. You rose from a high school graduate to become the top salesperson. Your efforts truly contributed to the company. There was a time when your hard work inspired me too. But you lost your way. After becoming a manager, you forgot what you needed to protect. The security guard handed me another file. Inside were photos of former employees, those who had left the company, their spirits broken under Nathan's harsh management. They were all talented people with promising futures. Last year in particular, the turnover rate among new employees was the highest on record. Nathan's face twisted in realization. It seemed he was finally beginning to understand the impact his actions had on the company. Nathan, we really wanted to learn from you. Those words made Nathan's shoulders tremble. The young employee's eyes no longer showed fear, but rather a hint of pity. A leader's role is not just to generate profit, nurturing people and building the future of the company. That is the true responsibility. Mr. Nelson pulled out an old photo. It was a group picture taken 20 years ago when Nathan had joined the company as a new employee. In it, Nathan looked fresh and eager, a far cry from his current self. Remember that version of yourself, the one who worked hard to learn and valued his colleagues. Megan presented the final audit report from the accounting department. It revealed the full extent of the fraud, and the total amount was far beyond the initial estimate. The total damage amounts to $1.2 million. All of this has been verified. What have I done? For the first time, a genuine admission slipped from Nathan's lips. His luxurious watch ticked against his trembling wrist. You will repay the full amount and take legal responsibility. That's where your atonement begins. The atmosphere in the office slowly began to shift. The heavy tension started to give way to a sense of new beginnings. However, this is not the end. Everyone looked surprised at my words. Your experience and skills, if misused, can be harmful. But if applied correctly, they can be an asset to the company. I will give you a chance to redeem yourself. Mr. Owens, you will start over from the ground up, handling everything from field work and cleaning to security, delivery, and warehouse operations. You will experience it all. Remember your roots and gain a true sense of management. Nathan dropped to his knees and bowed his head deeply. I'm sorry. Truly, I'm so sorry. Tyler stepped forward and spoke to Nathan. Someday, I hope we can proudly call you manager again. We'll be waiting for that day. Hearing those words, Nathan's shoulders shook violently. Tears fell, soaking his expensive leather shoes. All right, everyone, get back to your stations. One by one, the employees returned to their desks. Megan stood by my side, her gentle smile unwavering. The company had undoubtedly begun to change. 2 weeks had passed since the incident with Nathan, and the company had regained its calm. The sunlight streaming into the morning office felt brighter than before. The expressions of the new employees also looked much more refreshed. Megan remained by my side as usual, working with the same calm demeanor. There was no longer any need to pretend to be a janitor, but her attitude toward me hadn't changed. Megan, I might be home a bit late today. All right, I'll have dinner ready around 7:00 p.m. Since last week, we had started living together. Our home was on the top floor of a high-rise apartment building. From the windows, we could see the entire cityscape. Every morning, I woke up with the sunrise, and the aroma of Megan's coffee marked the start of the day. Good morning, Mr. Owens. Good morning, Megan. Tyler greeted us with a cheerful smile. He was now leading the project team, guiding the younger members. Do you have the materials ready for today's meeting? Yes, we all stayed up late to get it done. Another all-nighter. Take care of your health. Blushing slightly at Megan's concern, Tyler gave a shy nod. Her kindness had a positive effect throughout the entire company. During lunch, Megan opened a homemade lunch. We sat by the window in the break room, our usual spot, and enjoyed some time alone. I saw the new proposal. It's a plan for reforming the entire group, right? Yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Megan's feedback was spot on. Her skills in research and analysis, honed since her student days, were as sharp as ever. Stephen, are you not planning to do cleaning anymore? Yes, I'll keep doing it. Listening to voices from the field is essential for a leader. That's just like you, and I think it's wonderful. The innocent, light-hearted atmosphere between us hadn't changed since we started dating. At sunset, Megan and I took a walk in a nearby park. Seasonal flowers were blooming, and a pleasant breeze brushed past us. Stephen, when should we announce our marriage? Yeah, I think it's about time to make it public. As I took her hand, She leaned in happily. The feel of the ring on her finger affirmed the bond between us. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I feel the same. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to resolve the situation with Nathan. On the way home, Megan was brimming with excitement as she talked about the wedding. I nodded at her wish for a simple ceremony. When we got back, Megan rolled up her sleeves and started preparing dinner. Watching her in her apron, I couldn't help but savor the happiness I felt. Tomorrow's a day off. Shall we go somewhere? Sounds good. How about visiting the art museum for the first time in a while? The dinner laid out on the table reminded me of my mother's cooking. Megan seemed to remember all my preferences. Stephen, please always stay true to your hands-on approach. Yeah, I promise. Let's keep making this company better together. By the window with a view of the city lights, Megan was organizing work documents. Even at home, she was meticulous. Meeting Megan had changed my life dramatically. The weight of being the group chairman hadn't changed, but having her by my side made everything worthwhile. From now on, we would continue to support each other as we walked forward together. Outside the window, the city lights flickered. The two of us reflected in the glass seemed to hint at a promising future. The early summer morning sunlight illuminated the company that had been reborn. The light reflecting off the office building's windows was almost dazzling, as if symbolizing the company's future. The office layout had been significantly changed to encourage natural interaction between young and veteran employees, and partially adopting a free address system fostered conversations beyond departmental boundaries. The employees' expressions were softer than before, and the morning greetings were filled with energy. Tyler's project had achieved a 150% increase in quarterly sales and had become a model case for young talent development, even being featured in industry magazines. Other companies were increasingly visiting for insights, and Tyler himself was often invited as a speaker. Today, the new training program starts, right? Yes, it's the first step in spreading the hands-on philosophy across the entire group. Over 100 participants from 20 companies have already signed up. Last month, Megan and I quietly held our wedding ceremony. We avoided any flashy elements, choosing instead a simple celebration that allowed us to genuinely share our joy with the employees. The words of congratulations still resonated in my heart. Looking out the window, I saw employees already cleaning the premises from early in the morning. Among them were managers who once criticized the idea of fieldwork. With the new policy requiring all managers to do fieldwork once a month, the atmosphere in the company had undeniably changed. In the training room, Nathan stood in his work uniform before the new employees. 6 months of hands-on experience had changed him from the inside out. Once obsessed with luxury brands, he now worked confidently in his uniform. He never missed his 5 a.m. shift and led by example with his dedication to cleaning. I made a huge mistake. I lost my position and reputation. But through that, I learned something important. There is essential value in fieldwork. It nurtures people and drives the company's strength. The new employees listened intently, their eyes serious and focused. Gone was the old domineering attitude, and his words now carried the weight of hard-earned experience, captivating the younger employees. I must admit, I'm truly surprised by Nathan's transformation. To think that someone as stubborn as him could change so much. Mr. Nelson spoke with a thoughtful expression. On his desk was a graph showing the group's performance trends. Since the reforms, the numbers had shown a clear upward curve. The turnover rate had hit a record low, and employee satisfaction surveys showed significant improvements. Mr. Owens, the final adjustments for the new plan are complete. The submitted proposal carefully reflected the voices from the field. Balancing cost reduction and operational efficiency while also enhancing employee motivation was an ideal approach. Well done. You've grown a lot over the past 6 months. Megan continued working as the president's secretary while also serving as a special advisor to the corporate planning office. Her sharp insights and warm personality had become indispensable to the new company. In decision-making meetings, her advice remained consistently spot on. As I spoke during the morning assembly, the employees listened with earnest expressions, nodding in agreement. The new philosophy of hands-on leadership had firmly taken root. The old authoritarian atmosphere was gone, replaced by an open and dynamic environment where discussions flowed freely. Outside, the early summer breeze swayed the fresh green leaves. Sunlight filtering through the trees cast bright patterns on the office floor. Today, too, Nathan was on the field in his work uniform, diligently going about his tasks. The young employees watched Nathan's back as he worked from among them. Surely new leaders will emerge. All right, a new day is beginning. Hearing those words, the employees' eyes grew even brighter. Our reform has only just begun. From now on, we will continue to listen to the voices from the field and keep growing together. That's the most important lesson I learned from my days working as a janitor. A year has passed since then. Nathan started with field work, and now he works as a warehouse supervisor. He sold all his expensive suits and luxury watches, using the money to repay the amount he had embezzled. Most of his salary goes toward paying off the debt, and he continues to live alone in a modest one-room apartment. However, his expression now has a sense of clarity and purpose. He pours his passion into mentoring his juniors and has earned trust as a leader in the field. Although it will take more than 10 years to fully repay his debts, he doesn't seem to view it as a burden. The group's overall performance continues to rise, and the hands-on management philosophy has taken root deeply in each company. Tyler has become the youngest manager, emerging as a next-generation leader. As for me and Megan, our married life continues to be fulfilling, supporting each other every day. We head to work together in the morning, starting our day with the coffee Megan brews. Sometimes, we still do cleaning tasks as a pair. It remains an essential part of our routine, unchanged from before. Mr. Nelson has announced his retirement for next year. It has been decided that I will take over as his successor. I will be serving as both group chairman and president, but I plan to stick firmly to the hands-on approach. As the new season arrives, cherry blossoms can be seen from the office windows. The days I spent working as a janitor were invaluable experiences that shaped me as a leader. I will continue to listen to the voices from the field and together with all the employees, build an even better company. That's the future we're striving for.